Welcome to Docked, a brand new simulation game by Sabre Interactive that's just about to release today on PC, PS5 and Xbox. Port Wake is now your home base, and you'll be playing as Tommy, a very capable individual returning home to help save the family business. You will operate heavy machinery, restore and expand the port's infrastructure, manage daily logistics, sign contracts, balance vehicle capacity, and if everything goes well, turn a profit at the end of the day. But beyond the massive cranes and the overwhelming number of containers that I'm sure you cannot wait to start moving around, Docked demands something more. It requires proper management of your resources, your vehicles, and your time. The jobs you decide to take, how fast you choose to expand, will all play a part on how successful your session will be. So without further ado, here's everything you need to know before starting out. You start your playthrough in the middle of a storm forming off the coast of Port Wake. This opening sequence does a very good job immersing you into the game, and it introduces two very important vehicles, the STS crane and the reach stacker. You operate the crane to move containers from ship to shore, and the next morning you can use the reach stacker to position them inside the yard. This will mark the end of your first day. From there, the game transitions into a daily structure. Docked runs on a day-by-day operational loop. Each in-game day, you select and complete jobs, and at the beginning of your playthrough, you can complete 2 jobs per day. As you progress, that number increases, eventually expanding to multiple job slots. These are the active gameplay layer. Completing them will reward you with money, materials, and sometimes time-based bonus payouts. These rewards will fuel your progression. Every completed job contributes towards milestones, structured objectives that guide the growth of your port. Milestones might require completing a number of jobs, owning specific vehicles, signing contracts, reaching your TEU cargo target. And if in the first few days the game slowly introduces you to different jobs and gradually unlocks essential machinery, I will not spoil too much of that early gameplay so you can experience it for yourself. Instead, we'll cover the main categories, which will help you better understand the game's logic. The vehicles, the infrastructure, the job types, and maybe most importantly, the economy and processing system. Once you understand these 4 pillars, everything in-game will start to make a lot more sense. First, the vehicles. Before we go through each one, I think it's important to understand that more vehicles will not automatically mean more profit. Each machine has a specific role, it consumes energy or fuel, and adds daily maintenance costs. Making the most of your current equipment will weigh more than having more vehicles. The first major machine you operate in the game, and maybe the most impressive, is the one we mentioned earlier, the STS crane, or ship to shore. This is the backbone of your shipping line. Its sole responsibility is unloading containers from ships and loading them back once the orders are fulfilled. A few key things to understand: it only services the shipping line, and its capacity determines how fast the tasks are being processed. Without it, your sea-based operations simply do not function. For the container transport, we have the terminal tractor. Once containers are unloaded from ships, trucks or rail, they need to be transported internally within the port. It moves containers between lines, yards, and processing areas. If your unloading capacity is high but your transport capacity is low, containers will stall in the transition, so transport bottlenecks can become real. For yard handling, we have the reach stacker. This is one of the most versatile and essential vehicles in this game. It handles loading containers into level 1 yards, assisting in trucking operations, general container stacking. You're introduced to it early on because it represents the core of your yard management. Reach stackers are very flexible, but relying only on them for everything can create inefficiencies later in the game. As your port grows, specialization becomes more important. For the advanced yard handling, we have the straddle carrier. This becomes very essential once you unlock a level 2 yard. Compared to the reach stacker, it is required for higher tier yard operations, it improves processing flow in the larger container volumes, it allows scaling beyond the early game limits, and if you upgrade yards but fail to acquire a straddle carrier, your system will stall. Yard level and machinery must always match. Next, for the rail operations, we have the RMG crane. If you want to expand into rail-based logistics, this machine becomes a necessity. Just like the STS, this is exclusive to the shipping line. The RMG is specialized for rail container handling. The mobile hopper is used during bulk unloading operations, particularly when transferring cargo from ships into the ground transport. Unlike a container-focused machinery like the STS or the reach stacker, this typically involves bulk material, rather than the standard TEU handling. It doesn't store cargo long-term, but it plays an important role in keeping unloading operations continuous and efficient. For the high-level yard operations, we have the RTG crane. This is required for level 3 yards, and becomes more essential in late-stage scaling of your operations. The RTG units allow higher capacity storage, increased automation, larger processing through output, but they also increase maintenance costs and infrastructure demands, so these cranes signal that your port has transitioned into a large-scale operation. At least early on, focus on understanding what each vehicle does, and take your time with it. Don't rush into advancing too fast, and make sure that the machinery you're planning to buy can be supported by the infrastructure you have to build. As your milestones progression unlocks more options, you will have to find your balance. This game rewards careful planning from what I've seen. Next, let's look at the port's infrastructure and buildings. I feel like docked infrastructure can be divided into 4 major categories: lines, yards, offices, and utilities. Each plays a different role in how your port will process the cargo. Let's look at the lines. They will determine on how containers move in and out of your port. There are 3 main types: shipping line, trucking line, railway line, and each line controls how many containers can be received, how many units can be processed, the level of contracts you can sign, the number of machines assigned to that line. For example, the shipping line depends on the STS crane, the trucking line relies on yard machinery and internal transport, and the railway line requires an RMG capacity. Upgrading the line increases your maximum units, order level range, and overall output. We have a number of yards, and they're basically the place where your containers are being stored and handled after unloading. For the white-collar side of things, we got offices. They control how many contracts you can take on. There are separated offices for shipping line and the trucking line. They will generate opportunity, but if your office signs contracts you cannot fulfill, it will lead to penalties. The parking lots, they're pretty self-explanatory. They will determine how many vehicles you can buy when expanding. And then we're gonna look at utilities, power and fuel. This is where dock becomes a bit deeper than it first appears. Every vehicle consumes either electricity or fuel. Your port relies on power plants and gas stations. If your energy infrastructure is insufficient, machines might not operate efficiently. So as you can see, infrastructure is pretty much interconnected. Lines feed yards, yards require specific machinery, machinery consumes fuel or power, offices increase order volume. So if one part grows faster than the other, the entire system becomes unstable or inefficient. Now for the jobs. Well, they are the part in dock that you directly control. This is the hands-on gameplay, I guess. And at the start of your playthrough, you can complete 2 jobs per day. As you progress and expand, additional job slots unlock, eventually increasing the number of contracts that you can take on a daily basis. These jobs usually reward you with money, materials, and occasionally bonus payouts for efficiency or speed. Money funds vehicle purchases and upgrades, materials are required for infrastructure development. They also contribute towards the milestone progressions and unlocking new systems and expansion paths. If in your first few in-game days the focus is on learning the machines through jobs and different tasks, don't rush through them. Precision and familiarity will now make a large-scale processing feel much easier later on. And now that you understand the machines, the buildings, and the job structures, it's time to look at the management layer. At the center of everything, there's one unit, TEU, or the 20-foot equivalent unit. Every container that moves through your port is measured in TEUs. Orders are measured in TEUs, vehicles capacity is measured the same thing, yard storage, you get the point. It's the language that your port speaks, basically. When you sign an order, you are committing your port to process a certain number of containers. Each contract tells you exactly what's at stake, how many TEUs are required, how much revenue you can generate, and how much of a penalty you'll pay if you fail to handle them. So handled containers generate the revenue. Unprocessed containers generate penalties. So I guess it's safe to say that your port functions like a pipeline, and at the end of the day the game calculates your performance. Revenue comes from handled TEUs from your jobs, expenses come from vehicle maintenance, fuel and operational costs as well as penalties. Profit is what remains, and sometimes it might be in the negative. And now that you have a pretty good idea on how this game functions, I think your end goal should always be finding the balance between the intake and storage, between the transport and unloading, and between ambition and infrastructure. Once you understand that, the system won't be overwhelming you, and you'll feel like you're in control. That is Docked in a nutshell. I hope this guide gave you a clear foundation before starting your own playthrough. Let me know in the comments if you're planning to test this game or if this type of simulation isn't really for you. If you want us to explore some gameplay and make a series out of this, let me know as well. And as always, until the next time, stay safe on the road and keep on trucking. Or in this case, stay safe on the docks and keep unloading. Cheers.